It's Nick Shell again. Man, when I come home to my parents' house for Christmas, you never know who's going to show up in one of my videos about hair. So, my special guest for this video is someone I have mentioned more than once. It is none other than my Uncle Al Metello. Here he is.
Hey, how y'all? I'm Al. I'm Nick's uncle.
And he's a big Alabama fan.
Yeah. Roll Tide.
He's the reason I have Alabama memorabilia on my car and clothes and all of that. I wouldn't have known any different if it weren't for him. And his name actually happens to be Al. So, here's what's interesting. Here's where I want to start. I've got a lot of stuff I've got to cover. And the first thing I want to start is how old you are.
March, I will be 61.
So you're currently 60, the same age as my dad.
Yes.
And demographically, you are not like most men in America because you have all your hair.
As you can see it. Full head of hair.
A full head of hair, and that's not normal. I go about what I call the 10% rule. About 10% of boys in their teenage years are going to start having some dramatic hair loss. 20% of men in their 20s and so on. So I'm 35 years old. About 30% or about a third of men my age have started experiencing, just as I have. Nothing too noticeable for me, but it is there. And so you can imagine when we get to the 60s, so 60% of men by age 60 have dramatically lost hair, and here my Uncle Al has not lost any that I can see at all. I mean, just nothing, right? And that being said, he's got two brothers, and same exact thing. In fact, Joe, he just about has like dreadlocks, and he's like 62.
He's kind of like an afro going.
Yeah, well, it's funny because him and Bob both have like tight curly hair. Mm-hmm. But either way, all three brothers, full heads of hair, and in baby pictures, all just born with a lot of hair. And so demographically, I also want to break it down this way. I've mentioned before that if you're, quote, white or Caucasian or of European descent, you're more likely to have a big, thick beard, but more likely to lose your hair quicker. And that's for if you're white. Well, what's interesting is my uncle here is half Mexican and half Italian. So that really only applies to half of that, which would be, the Italian would be the white part, but then the Mexican part is not. So it's interesting because I guess you could say I'm 3/4 white because I am a quarter Mexican, but I just think it's interesting to have three uncles all on that side, the only three uncles on my mom's side, and all have full heads of hair. And so Joe is actually a year older than you, right?
Or Joe's a year younger.
So you're 60, he's 59, and then Bobby's 57, right?
57, yes. So
all right there around 60. And so I hadn't really thought about that before, but that's pretty remarkable, I think. Because on my dad's side of the family, it's not that way. I mentioned recently that on my dad's side of the family, no one's just completely bald, but by the time you get into your 30s, you start having hair loss, and the older you get, you definitely you're about half bald, or however you want to call that. So that's what I'm used to on one side of the family. On the other side, complete opposite. And so something I wanted to talk about in this video too is, and I got some pictures to back this up, I mentioned in the interview with my mom how I have a theory that when you're 1 year old, you can look at your hair and get a good prediction of what your hair is going to look like at age 35. So take a look at your picture at 1 year old, compare it to your hair and thickness, or use it as a prediction to see what you'll look like at 35. And if you want to see that, just type in my channel, interview with my mom, 1 year old hair theory. You'll see it in there. I back it up with pictures. That's my theory. However, I want to debunk a theory today, and that is, and I've heard it since I was a teenager, is that you can simply look at your mother's father to determine how much hair you're going to have. I'm going to debunk that right now with a few pictures. All right. So, my mother's father is obviously my Uncle Al's father. Same father, obviously. Mm-hmm. Get it? All right. So, I want to start with this picture. This picture right here, and we'll let the camera focus on it. This picture was taken in 1985. And this picture is of me and my grandfather in 1985. Look at my grandfather, full head of hair. Granted, it was basically all white by that point, but still full, thick of head of hair. And he was 55 in age in the year 1985. Okay, so if it were based on your mother's father, then I would have completely just thick hair, and my hairline wouldn't go up at all like that. You wouldn't see any thinning in the back at all if I were to have followed this. I mean, that's age 55, and I'm 35 and already have this going on. All right, I want to show you another picture too. This is of him when he was 28 years old. And I was married when I was 27, and I already started noticing my hairline go up. Well, this is my grandfather at age 28. And so you can look at my other videos and see signs of me losing my hair when I have photos of me at age 19, 23, and so on. I made several of those videos. But look at that. I mean, just full, thick, perfect hair. And so, again, and more proof that I didn't follow his traits there. So you can't go off your mother's father thing. Now, this last picture, he eventually started losing his hair. But it wasn't until he was in his late 60s, his early 70s, before it even began showing up again. I know we have to give the camera a minute to focus. There we go. That was my great-grandfather on my dad's side, and you can see he lost most of his hair. That's how the men do in my dad's side of the family. Of course, he was in his 90s at this point. But my grandfather was in his early 70s at this point. And you do see he was starting to lose his hair by that point. But it took to that point. For him to be basically in his 70s, that's about what that's understandable. But we know for a fact he had all of his hair at 55, and here I am at 35. So we know that that's not, I'm officially in my mind debunking the theory that you can look at your mother's father to determine how much hair you're going to have. Again, I invite you to watch the video I made with my mom showing you evidence in my own life. Look at the hairline and look at the thickness of your baby picture when you were 1 year old and compare it to, or use it as a predictor for age 35. That's the theory that I'm presenting. Now, before we go, so I think it's something I talk about a lot on my channel is how, since most of us men do lose our hair, it's just an extra anxiety or burden we have to carry in our lives to think, because even if you're 30 and haven't lost any hair yet, well, I'll lose it tomorrow, you kind of thing, because most men do. But my question is, have you ever had any thoughts like that? Have you ever thought, man, I wonder if I'm going to go bald? Have you ever once had that thought?
Oh, I think you do when you're younger, but after, like you said, my dad having his hair in his late 70s, I hadn't really worried about it. I just got to worry about mine getting gray.
Yeah, and that's something interesting because in that picture of my grandfather at 55, he was pretty much all nearly white, actually, if not gray. And that's something my mom was saying the other day, is that I really don't have any gray hair. No. I mean, if I do, I'll pluck it out, but it's enough that I can just do that and be done. And of course, we know in my beard, if it'll show it, I've got some right here, but as far as my hair, it stayed dark the whole time, and I haven't had to worry, at least this far, about dyeing my hair. So I do wonder too if there's any connection there. If you're more likely to keep your hair, or you're more likely to go gray.
Right.
I don't know, because my mom was saying, which is Al's sister, my mom, was saying that on the Mexican side that they didn't go gray. Like grandma, my grandma and his mother just passed away very recently, a couple months ago, as I've talked about here on my channel, and she pretty much, from what I remember, her hair was still mainly black.
Right.
And she was how old?
81.
81. But you saw the picture of my grandfather, and by 55, he was pretty much all white. So he kept his hair, but it turned white. So I don't know. Those are things I want to kick around. But I just thought this would be interesting. But yeah, so you did think about, what if I lose my hair? But
sure.
When's the last time you really even had that thought?
Oh, it's been probably 20 years ago.
Okay.
Just something I hadn't worried about.
Maybe 40.
Lately. Right.
Well, because by 40, most of the men around your age were probably losing their hair, and you're thinking, am I next? And you weren't.
Right.
You won the lottery when it came to that. So, if nothing else, I guess I could say on behalf of all my subscribers and viewers that good for you. You're lucky, because that's one less thing you have to worry about in life. I mean, we've all got our own insecurities. We've all got our own burdens in life. But, one thing my Uncle Al never had to worry about was losing hair. So just like for me, something I'm grateful for every day. My wife and I are able to have children, and I have friends that can't. And so, it's nothing I had control over. There are certain things that are like that, and you can't be the judge. You can't try to sort it out. But it's interesting. To me, it was just so fascinating to realize that all three of my uncles on my mom's side have all their hair, and they're around age 60, and that's just not what I'm used to and not what I'm expecting. So thank you for being part of the video.
You're welcome, Nick. You're welcome.
You never know who I might have next on here. Thanks for watching.